breaking news that's coming to us here at Sky News. The Metropolitan Police's decision to strip a serving officer of his warrant card amid claims of rape and domestic violence has been overturned in a judicial review. Let's get more with our correspondent Matthew Thompson, who joins us now. What more can you tell us, Matt?
Well, this is a potentially seismic case. It does require a bit of background, so do bear with me as I try and trot you through this. Sergeant Lino Di Maria had his vetting clearance removed in 2023 from the Metropolitan Police as part of something called Operation Assure. It's a programme that the Metropolitan put in place after a series of scandals, including, of course, Wayne Couzens, the murderer of Sarah Everard, to try and clean up the police, to try and review the histories of certain officers and suspend and remove their vetting if they'd had a series of allegations against them, allegations largely of a sexual or domestic violence nature. And crucially, those allegations didn't necessarily need to be proven. And this is effectively what Sergeant Lino Di Maria was challenging in this judicial review. He was basically saying that the series of allegations that had been put against him, some of them very, very serious. They include 2 allegations of rape, but these had been through previous disciplinary hearings in the police and found that he had no case to answer on either of those. And there were a series of other allegations, including domestic violence, for example, which had not yet been proven and which he strenuously denies. And he was basically arguing that these were not the basis on which to perhaps remove his vetting, but that removal of his vetting should not then have led directly to potential loss of his job. And effectively, under the Operation Assure procedures, that's probably what would have happened. Vetting gets removed from an officer, they can then appeal. If that appeal fails, well, then they're put on something called a gross incompetence hearing, which can ultimately lead to their dismissal. So with that background out of the way, what has just happened is that Sergeant Di Maria has won that judicial review. The court has declared that the process for removing vetting for police officers could and should not lead directly to a dismissal. It doesn't have the right procedural safeguards in place. The judgment is very long and detailed, so we will be pouring through it as the day goes. But in broad terms, that's what it's saying, that the vetting procedures, the removal of a police vetting should not therefore immediately lead to a dismissal, that they should not be considered to be dismissal proceedings, and that has happened in this case and it should effectively be revoked. The real significance of this case is that the Met has previously argued that if it lost it, which it now has, the 300 or so officers under Operation Assure could potentially be reinstated. These are officers with, shall we say, at least checkered histories, and that they could now ask for backdated pay and all sorts of things, and they might be working again as police officers. The one other final thought I'll leave you with is that the judgment does leave room, for example, for the government to legislate to effectively give a statutory footing to vetting procedures that means they could lead to dismissal.
Matt, let's just hear from the Met Commissioner, Mark Rowley, who's making an address outside New Scotland Yard.
Good morning. For more than 2 decades, police leaders have been asking government for greater powers to be able to sack officers who are not fit to wear a uniform. For 2.5 years, I've repeated that call, and successive governments have promised change. Tens of thousands of good officers join the Met because we care deeply about public safety. The majority of the Met is committed to clearing out those who threaten our collective. This, of course, makes us better able to protect communities. Being able to sack officers who fail vetting is absolutely critical. And under Operation Assure in the past 18 months, 96 officers have been sacked or resigned in the process. 29 more are on special leave, having lost vetting pending final hearings. And over 100 more are in the early stages of vetting reviews. Those we've removed vetting from had a pattern of behaviour that meant that if they applied to work in policing today, we would never let them in. Today's ruling on the law has left policing in a hopeless position. We now have no mechanism to rid the Met of officers who are not fit to hold vetting. Those who cannot be trusted to work with women, or those who cannot be trusted to enter the homes of vulnerable people. It is absolutely absurd that we cannot lawfully sack them. This would not be the case in other sectors where staff have nothing like the powers comparable to police officers. This judgment is focused on the human rights of Di Maria. But there are wider human rights at play here. Those of the public and those of the colleagues who have to work alongside officers like this. We are seeking leave to appeal the judgment, not just for the Met, but for law enforcement nationally, due to the profoundly damaging implications. The judge has identified a clear gap in the law, one that we have done our best to bridge, but as the judge has said, the answer lies in strengthened police vetting regulations. So, in repeating the same request for 2.5 years, one echoed by the Casey and Angelina reviews, I am once again calling on government today to introduce new regulations as a matter of extreme urgency. It is crucial new regulations are practical, nimble and empowering, and they must allow police forces to deal with those who pose risks to colleagues and of course to the public. And they must apply to those we've already removed. Finally, regardless of the current legal framework, the public of London have my assurance and that of my colleagues that Di Maria and those like him will not be policing the streets or working alongside other officers. They will remain on vetting special leave, a ridiculous waste of money, but the least bad option until regulations are repaired.